Yesterday we told you about two new polls we released exclusively by Abington Research. These polls from Calgary show the NDP is surging in what I used to think was the most conservative city in the country, and the riding of Calgary Northwest and Calgary Shaw. These are not right downtown hipster ridings. These are picket fence, front lawn, real bedrock conservative ridings. The NDP is either ahead in Calgary Shaw, they're ahead by 6 points, or basically neck and neck with the Wild Rose. In both ridings, the PCs under Jim Prentice are in third. Now, it's obvious to me why Jim Prentice calls himself a conservative, but he is not a conservative, and conservatives see through him. He just brought in the worst budget in Alberta history. I don't say that as an insult, but as an observation. It was the most wasteful budget with the most tax hikes, more than 50 of them, with the largest annual deficit projected. It is simply the most left-wing budget Alberta's ever had, and it was a cop-out. In Alberta, we don't live beyond our means. We balance our budget. We invented that under Ralph Klein. Jim Prentice just brought in a left-wing budget. So why would a conservative vote for him? But it's more than that, because remember what Jim Prentice did just before Christmas. Prentice had a majority in the legislature. He could have passed any budget, good or bad. He could have really done anything. That's the nature of our parliamentary system. But it wasn't enough for him. And even though he came into the provincial politics unsullied by its recent debauchery, he lost it quickly with an unforced error. Here's what I mean. It wasn't enough for him to have a majority. He secretly reached out to the leader of the opposition, Danielle Smith, of the truly conservative Wild Rose Party, and he cut a backroom deal with her. No notice, no consent, no public debate. And he said, hey, why don't you dissolve, de facto dissolve, the official opposition and come join my team? Yeah, just get out of the way. I don't like all these tough questions and questions, period. I don't like all the scrutiny. I don't like the fact that there's, a 12.5 opposition MLAs. Just come over and join the PCs. And she did. That's her disgrace as well. But it showed that Jim Prentice was not a clean, squeaky clean outsider following the rules. It showed that he could be just as dirty as the rest of them. And he would undermine a public institution. I'm not talking about the Wild Rose Party. I'm talking about the nonpartisan institution of the office of the leader of the opposition, what people of all stripes need to keep the government to account. Jim Prentice showed he's a dirty player. So, of course, people are going to the NDP, the only unsullied party in this regard. But here's my warning for my fellow Calgarians. If you choose the NDP instead of the Wild Rose, not only are you getting a truly socialist party in league with the unions, and by the way, in Alberta, their finance laws allows them to take direct cash from unions, so you can expect massive government raises for those public sector unions as a reward. You can expect hostile environmental laws. I mean, remember, the NDP is the most environmentally extremist party. Rachel Notley, the leader, has already disparaged the Northern Gateway pipeline. So you will have terrible policies. You will have a terrible allegiance to government sector workers. But you will have the thinnest, weakest caucus in the country. Remember when Jack Layton's orange tide came in, and that tide brought all sorts of flotsam and jetsam ashore that no one thought would win? I mean, remember the case of Ruth Ellen Brosseau, that NDP candidate from Quebec, who thought it was such a joke that she ran, that she had no chance of winning. She was a waitress, and she actually went down to Vegas for the whole election. She never even campaigned in her riding, and she came back and said, you're an MP. No one knew who she was, but that orange tide came in. It will be the same in Alberta. I went to the Alberta NDP's website, and I just plucked 10 names off this website, and this is from their own biographies. So I have not done any deep opposition research. Let me show you the people that Rachel Notley, the leader of the NDP, cobbled together just as placeholder candidates for the NDP without seriously thinking they had a chance to win, and they surely didn't think they had a chance. Let me show you the kind of people who will make up a new NDP government. They're almost as bad as Jim Prentice and his caucus. Here, let's just go through some of them. Let's start with Shay Anderson. He is not a ZZ Top rock star or in a ZZ Top tribute band, though he sort of looks like it. He is a top union activist, and this is basically the bedrock of the NDP, the big labor union. So he will be what? I don't know, finance minister? But he at least has some experience in life. Let's look at 9 more NDP candidates. I'll whistle through these very quickly. Here's a guy, Thomas Dang. Looks like a good kid. Not sure if he's old enough to drink. His biography says he's still in school. How about Jocelyn Head? Well, she's in school too. She's enrolled at Grant MacEwan taking a Bachelor of Arts degree. So maybe she would be, I don't know, transportation minister? What's unimportant in cabinet? Here's Aaron Hagen. He's pursuing a digital communications and media diplomacy with a specialization in digital journalism. So I guess he'll be the cabinet minister in charge of tweeting. Do you see what's gone on here? They basically went to the campus clubs and said, look guys, will someone put their name down as a candidate? We need someone. And you know, these, I don't know if they're teenagers, but they're students. Here, let me keep going on. Leslie Mahoney seems like a nice person. She's currently studying at University of Lethbridge too. How about Hannah Schlamp? She's attending the University of Alberta, working towards a degree in Spanish. So maybe she'd be an intergovernmental affairs minister or something like that. Here's Catherine Harder. This is my favorite biography. This is taken from the NDP website. I just got to read this line to you. She graduated from the University of Alberta at Augustana campus, May of 2015, with a Bachelor of Music. But hang on, it's just April. How can she have graduated in May of 2015? That is the future. Unless she has come back in some sort of NDP time machine, I think she's just a little bit shy about the fact that she is still a kid who is basically, you know, old enough to have a babysitter, maybe to be a babysitter of her own. Let me just go through a couple more. Here's Eileen Burke. She graduated almost 2 whole years ago. John Carson is the ripe old age of 23. And Michael Connolly has a solid resume. He worked for the anti-Alberta NDP in Ottawa. Now listen, I'm not making fun of young people. I used to be a young person myself. I wish I still was a young person. But if I was a student in school, if I was 23, I probably would not think that I am cabinet material. But I want to leave with one last question. Look, the media wants the Alberta NDP to win because they despise Alberta in its true nature. They despise how entrepreneurial, how businesslike, how conservative it is. They would love to have Rachel Notley, a hardcore left-wing ideologue, and this band of jokesters become MLAs. They would love that. Jim Prentice does not deserve to win. He has undone the economic record of greats like Ralph Klein. He has undone the democratic legitimacy of the government by his secret deal with Danielle Smith. And by the way, we shouldn't spare Preston Manning of the so-called Manning Centre for Building Democracy for not just dissolving the opposition, but giving us such a left-wing budget that has put the NDP in such a strong position. Albertans have to wake up in the next 7 days and step back from the brink. I know it would delight the Globe and Mail if we had an NDP premier in Alberta. I mean, remember their grotesque front page headline, Alberta steps into the present, when Alison Redford became premier. They're so disparaging and condescending towards Alberta. They hate Alberta because Alberta shames Ontario, a have-not province that used to be the economic engine. I think a lot of people would be delighted if Rachel Notley and the NDP won. I think it would be great for editorial cartoonists. It would be great for Saskatchewan's Chamber of Commerce. But I think despite its flaws, the only party that can responsibly be voted for in Alberta is Wildrose. With all its flaws, with all its amateurism, with all its hastily appointed leader, with all his quirks and quarks, I think the Wildrose Party is the only party. You can't vote for the deceptive Jim Prentice, that red Tory who would further put Alberta in debt. You cannot vote for an NDP leader. You've got to vote Wildrose. For the Rebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.